From A Perfect Day for Banana Fish by J.D. Salinger. "See more glass," said Sybil Carpenter, who was staying at the hotel with her mother. "Did you see more glass?" "Pussycat, stop saying that. It's driving Mummy absolutely crazy. Hold still, please." Mrs. Carpenter was putting santan oil on Sybil's shoulders, spreading it over the delicate wing-like blades of her back. Sybil was sitting insecurely on a huge inflated beach ball facing the ocean. She was wearing a canary-yellow two-piece bathing suit, one piece of which she would not actually be needing for another 9 or 10 years. "It was really just an ordinary silk handkerchief. You could see when you got up close," said the woman in the beach chair beside Mrs. Carpenter's. "I wish I knew how she tied it. It was really darling." "It sounds darling," Mrs. Carpenter agreed. "Sybil, hold still, pussy." "Did you see more glass?" said Sybil. Mrs. Carpenter sighed. "All right," she said. She replaced the cap on the santan oil bottle. "Now run and play, pussy. Mummy's going up to the hotel and have a martini with Mrs. Hubble. I'll bring you the olive." Set loose, Sybil immediately ran down to the flat part of the beach and began to walk in the direction of Fisherman's Pavilion. Stopping only to sink a foot in a soggy collapsed castle, she was soon out of the area reserved for guests of the hotel. She walked for about a quarter of a mile, and then suddenly broke into an oblique run up the soft part of the beach. She stopped short when she reached the place where a young man was lying on his back. "Are you going in the water? See more glass?" she said. The young man started, his right hand going to the lapels of his terry-cloth robe. He turned over on his stomach, letting a sausage towel fall away from his eyes, and he squinted up at Sybil. "Hello, Sybil. Are you going in the water?" "I was waiting for you," said the young man. "What's new?" "What?" said Sybil. "What's new? What's on the programme?" "My daddy's coming tomorrow on a nary plane," Sybil said, kicking sand. "Not in my face, baby," the young man said, putting his hand on Sybil's ankle. "Well, it's about time he got here, your daddy. I've been expecting him hourly. "Where's the lady?" Sybil said. "The lady?" The young man brushed some sand out of his thin hair. "That's hard to say, Sybil. She may be in any one of 1,000 places. At the hairdresser's, having her hair dyed mink, or making dolls for poor children in her room." Lying prone now, he made 2 fists, set one on top of the other, and rested his chin on the top one. "Ask me something else, Sybil," he said. "That's a fine bathing suit you have on. If there's one thing I like, it's a blue bathing suit." Sybil stared at him, then looked down at her protruding stomach. "This is a yellow," she said. "This is a yellow." "Is it? Come a little closer." Sybil took a step forward. "You're absolutely right. What a fool I am. Are you going in the water?" "I'm seriously considering it. I'm giving it plenty of thought, Sybil, you'll be glad to know." Sybil prodded the rubber float that the young man sometimes used as a headrest. "It needs air," she said. "You're right. It needs more air than I'm willing to admit." He took away his fists and let his chin rest on the sand. "Sybil," he said, "you're looking fine. It's good to see you. Tell me about yourself." He reached in front of him and took both of Sybil's ankles in his hands. "I'm a Capricorn," he said. "What are you?" "Sharon Lipschutz said you let her sit on the piano seat with you," Sybil said. "Sharon Lipschutz said that?" Sybil nodded vigorously. He let go of her ankles, drew up his hands, and laid the side of his face on his right forearm. "Well," he said, "you know how these things happen, Sybil. I was sitting there playing, and you were nowhere in sight, and Sharon Lipschutz came over and sat down next to me. I couldn't push her off, could I?" "Yes." Oh, no, I couldn't do that," said the young man. "I'll tell you what I did do, though." "What?" "I pretended she was you." Sybil immediately stooped and began to dig in the sand. "Let's go in the water," she said. "All right," said the young man. "I think I can work it in." "Next time, push her off," Sybil said. "Push who off?" "Sharon Lipschutz." "Ah, Sharon Lipschutz," said the young man. "How that name comes up, mixing memory and desire." He suddenly got to his feet. He looked at the ocean. "Sybil," he said, "I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll see if we can catch a banana fish." "A what?" "A banana fish," he said, and undid the belt of his robe. He took off the robe. His shoulders were white and narrow, and his trunks were royal blue. He folded the robe, first lengthwise, then in thirds. He unrolled the towel he had used over his eyes, spread it out on the sand, and then laid the folded robe on top of it. He bent over, picked up the float, and secured it under his right arm. Then with his left hand he took Sybil's hand. The two started to walk down to the ocean. "I imagine you've seen quite a few banana fish in your day," the young man said. Sybil shook her head. "You haven't? Where do you live, anyway?" "I don't know," said Sybil. "Sure you know. You must know. Sharon Lipschutz knows where she lives, and she's only 3.5. Sybil stopped walking and yanked her hand away from him. She picked up an ordinary beach shell and looked at it with elaborate interest. She threw it down. "Whirley-Wood, Connecticut," she said, and resumed walking, stomach foremost. "Whirley-Wood, Connecticut," said the young man. "Is that anywhere near Whirley-Wood, Connecticut, by any chance?" Sybil looked at him. "That's where I live," she said impatiently. "I live in Whirley-Wood, Connecticut." She ran a few steps ahead of him, caught up her left foot in her right hand, and hopped 2 or 3 times. "You have no idea how clear that makes everything," the young man said. Sybil released her foot. "Did you read Little Black Sambo?" she said. "It's very funny you should ask me that," he said. "It so happens I just finished reading it last night." He reached down and took back Sybil's hand. "What did you think of it?" he asked her. "Did the tigers all run around that tree?" "I thought they'd never stop. I never saw so many tigers." "There were only 6, Sybil said. "Only 6, said the young man. "Do you call that only?" "Do you like wax?" Sybil asked. "Do I like what?" asked the young man. "Wax. Very much. Don't you?" Sybil nodded. "Do you like olives?" she asked. "Olives. Yes, olives and wax. I never go any place without 'em." "Do you like Sharon Lipschutz?" Sybil asked. Yes, I do," said the young man. "What I like particularly about her is that she never does anything mean to little dogs in the lobby of the hotel. That little toy bull that belongs to that lady from Canada, for instance. You probably won't believe this, but some little girls like to poke that little dog with balloon sticks. Sharon doesn't. She's never mean or unkind. That's why I like her so very much." Sybil was silent. "I like to chew candles," she said finally. "Who doesn't?" said the young man, getting his feet wet. "Wow, it's cold." He dropped the rubber float on its back. "No, wait just a second, Sybil. We'll get out a little bit." They waded out till the water was up to Sybil's waist. Then the young man picked her up and laid her on her stomach on the float. "Don't you ever wear a bathing cap or anything?" he asked. "Don't let go," Sybil ordered. "You hold me now." "Miss Carpenter, please, I know my business," the young man said. "You just keep your eyes open for any banana fish. This is a perfect day for banana fish." "I don't see any," Sybil said. "That's understandable. Their habits are very peculiar." He kept pushing the float. The water was not quite up to his chest. "They lead a very tragic life," he said. "Do you know what they do, Sybil?" She shook her head. "Well, they swim into a hole where there's a lot of bananas. They're very ordinary-looking fish when they swim in, but once they get in, they behave like pigs. Why, I've known some banana fish to swim into a banana hole and eat as many as 78 bananas." He edged the float and its passenger a foot closer to the horizon. "Naturally, after that, they're so fat they can't get out of the hole again. Can't fit through the door." "Not too far out," Sybil said. "What happens to them?" "What happens to who?" "The banana fish." "Oh, you mean after they eat so many bananas that they can't get out of the banana hole?" "Yes," said Sybil. "Well, I hate to tell you, Sybil, they die." "Why?" said Sybil. "Well, they get banana fever. It's a terrible disease." "Here comes a wave," Sybil said nervously. "We'll ignore it. We'll snub it," said the young man. "Two snobs." He took Sybil's ankles in his hands and pressed down and forward. The float nosed over the top of the wave. The water soaked Sybil's blonde hair, but her scream was full of pleasure. With her hand, when the float was level again, she wiped away a flat, wet band of hair from her eyes and reported, "I just saw one." "Saw what, my love?" "A banana fish." "Good God, no," said the young man. "Did he have any bananas in his mouth?" "Yes," said Sybil. 6. The young man suddenly picked up one of Sybil's wet feet, which were drooping over the end of the float, and kissed the arch. "Hey," said the owner of the foot, turning around. "Hey yourself. We're going in now. You had enough?" "No." "Sorry," he said, and pushed the float towards shore until Sybil got off it. He carried it the rest of the way. "Goodbye," said Sybil, and ran without any regret in the direction of the hotel. The young man put on his robe, closed the lapels tight, and jammed his towel into his pocket. He picked up the slimy, wet, cumbersome float and put it under his arm. He plodded alone through the soft, hot sand toward the hotel. On the main floor of the hotel, which the management directed bathers to use, a woman with zinc salve on her nose got into the elevator with a young man. "I see you're looking at my feet," he said to her when the car was in motion. "I beg your pardon," said the woman. "I said, I see you looking at my feet." "I beg your pardon. I happen to be looking at the floor," said the woman, and faced the doors of the car. "If you want to look at my feet, say so," said the young man. "But don't be a goddamn sneak about it." "Let me out of here, please," the woman said quickly to the girl operating the car. The car doors opened and the woman got out without looking back. "I have 2 normal feet and I can't see the slightest goddamn reason why anybody should stare at them," said the young man. 5, please." He took his room key out of his robe pocket. He got off at the 5th floor, walked down the hall and let himself into 507. The room smelled of new calfskin luggage and nail lacquer remover. He glanced at the girl lying asleep on one of the twin beds. Then he went over to one of the pieces of luggage, opened it, and from under a pile of shorts and undershirts he took out an Ortges caliber 7.65 automatic. He released the magazine, looked at it, then reinserted it. He cocked the piece. Then he went over and sat down on the unoccupied twin bed, looked at the girl, aimed the pistol, and fired a bullet through his right temple.